Okay, there we go. So welcome all of you. I know there will be others joining as the evening unfolds. This is our worldwide global evening practice group, and we're alternating week by week to be in different time zones. So this is the UK-Europe time zone. Next week it's going to be New York based, and the week after that it's going to be New Zealand based. So it means it's a little more convenient for different areas at different weeks. You're welcome, of course, to come to all of them, and we are expanding the Zoom account so that when the numbers do get over 100, we're able to cope with that. So I'm very delighted to introduce this evening. Our special guest today is Olf Stoiber, and I've had a great pleasure of meeting Olf right at the beginning when evening was really just being brought to the world. He's one of my favorite people on the planet, not just because he's an all-round nice guy, but he's also someone who is incredibly skilled, very knowledgeable, and has a lot of wisdom, and he's offering to share that this evening. If I just give you a little bit of a breakdown on how the evening will unfold. It's a 2-hour session, although Olf has been kind enough to stay here. If there are more questions we don't get through during the session, we're willing to leave the session open beyond the 2 hours. So you're really going to get your value this evening. So the first hour, we're going to be working with Olf. He's got 2 topics this evening, and his 2 topics are about the subtleties of touch in evening and why it matters. And the second topic is going to be about using hypnotic language to make your change work more elegant. So when you're doing your evening sessions, your language is aligned with great change, rather than clumsily getting in the way, which is the alternative sometimes. So looking forward to that. At 8 o'clock UK time, so after the first hour, we're going to pause just for a minute for a lot of applause for our key workers. I know that it will be appropriate wherever you are in the world, but each Thursday evening at 8 o'clock in the UK, people go to the end of their drives and they're banging pots and pans and lots of applause and so on. So if we can join just for a minute of applause for all of our key workers globally, that will be fabulous. And then into the second hour, we'll be back with Olf, and towards maybe 25 past that second hour, we're going to get you into breakout groups so that you can practice some of what has been learned. Experiment a little and just get a little bit of a feel for it in practice. And then we'll all come back together, a few-minute wrap-up, and then we'll leave it open for questions beyond the hour as well when we formally wrap up. So welcome all of you, and just be aware, I'll say it once now, I've said it a few times before we formally started, but the bottom left for most of you will be your mute, unmute. If you can leave it unmuted most of the time, unless you're actually making a contribution or a question. In the middle at the bottom there, for most of you, it's a chat feature, so you can put comments to the group. Also the other one that you might want to just be aware of, for most people, it's the top right. You can switch between gallery view and presenter view, depending on whether there's a discussion between us all or whether it's mainly Olf conversing with a specific person like myself. It will be a better viewing experience to switch between those two. Great. Well, Olf, absolute pleasure to welcome you. And you've probably already got a little bit of a plan as to which of the 2 you would like to kick us off with in terms of whether it be the subtleties of touch or the hypnotic language. Have you a favored order on this?
Absolutely. I'd love to start with hypnotic language, and then when we finish that topic, move on into the subtleties of the art of touch of havening.
Wonderful, wonderful. Do you want to, just by way of introduction, Olf, say a little bit about how you came into havening and then became both a practitioner and then a trainer and launched things in Germany?
Yeah, sure. I came into Havening by stalking Dr. Ronald Ruden. Let me give you a little background on myself. Have been a full-time hypnotherapist for 20 years by now, or 19 years. I started off in 2001. I did train with Terence Watts in the UK. I've done a lot of additional courses ranging from NLP, EFT, EMDR, EDXM, lots of acronyms, obviously, Firewalk trainer. But my main forte has always been hypnotherapy. This is the modality I love. I've been lucky enough to have a good start into the world of hypnotherapy and into actually going full time quite soon, because beginning of 2000, it wasn't common in Germany. There were psychotherapists and some medical doctors who used hypnosis, but it wasn't all too common for, just like real hypnotherapists to be around. So I had a lucky start, and I've always played around with other modalities, trying this, testing that. And each and every technique, it was kind of nice learning it, but nothing really stuck with me. So it was always just hypnosis until one fateful afternoon about 10 years ago in London. Some of my colleagues and myself went to join a 3-day workshop in London, which was held by Paul McKenna and Richard Bandler, one of the creators of NLP.
Yeah.
And Richard as well as Paul, they like to demonstrate stuff up on the stage, and Paul, he usually likes to put in some new stuff as well. So at some point during his presentation, he invited a person up onto the stage and frantically started to rub that person's arms, just like saying some stuff, and like 3 minutes later, symptom seems to have been gone. And this was like some black magic. We didn't know what was going on. Paul didn't give a real explanation about what he did. So later on the day, he did a second presentation, and same stuff went down again, some arm rubbing, some hypnotic suggestions, and it all went by so quickly, we didn't really have time to notice what was going on. So we sat there taking notes, writing down, okay, rubbing this, saying this, and after the seminar finished, we all sat together trying this stuff like on ourselves and asked, oh, okay, do you have something we could work on? And we found an issue we could work on, and it did work by some sort of weird magic.
Yes.
So back then, I'm not sure if the name Havening was already around, but Paul did mention the name of the creator of the technique, who taught him, a certain Dr. Ronald Ruden.
Oh, I know
So
him. Yeah.
when flying back home, I sat down, I Googled Dr. Ruden. Took me a while until I found a general practitioner in the New York area. So I emailed him, are you the Dr. Ruden who invented this weird technique where you rub someone's forearms, and suddenly all symptoms seem to be vanished. And I told him, we've been trying this and it works so beautifully, so we'd like to properly learn it. He did write back. He sent me a very long email. He was very nice and talkative, and still I was a bit disappointed because he had no official training to offer back then. So I asked again, can you set up a training? I'll bring some people in from Germany. I'll come myself and I'll pay you so you can teach me, because obviously we already used it and it worked beautifully, but especially in Germany, you need to have some sort of license, or let's call it official authorization, unless you want to get yourself into trouble. So I emailed him and he wrote back, no, not now, maybe next year, not now. And at some point he stopped answering my emails. And I was like, have I gone too far? Was I maybe a bit too obnoxious? And yeah, after a little while, I got the email, waited for a long time. He said, okay, 2014, there's going to be a training in the UK, and quite obviously I flew there. So that was my first practitioner's training. I went to many other trainings, asked Ronald about training opportunities so I could teach people, my students in Germany, and the opportunity came up. So I had the huge fortune of Tony training me. He did the trainers training, which was absolutely brilliant. Took a lot of time really making sure we knew our stuff. We could, we have a full understanding of the theory. We could do practical demonstrations. And maybe half a year or close to a year later, I was a trainer in Germany. And that was like how I, found Havening. And this has become my second love. So when I started off, I told you it was always hypnosis, and no matter what other technique I tried, it was always nice, but it never stuck. Havening stuck, and that's so good. So for me right now, hypnosis and havening, those are two sides of the same coin, and there's actually no client by now who doesn't get both. So we always use hypnosis, but we also always use havening. And I'm really grateful for this wonderful technique, and for Ron for inventing it, obviously for Stephen for developing it, putting a lot of heart and philosophy into it, and for Tony for making sure we trainers can do a good job. So yeah, that's my havening story.
Wonderful. There's some happy memories for me amongst all of that story as well. We're introduced to proper vice beer when we came to launch that first program. That's great. One of the things I love about havening is the way that it will blend with other methods. And this is where also hypnotic language, that blends really within whatever techniques people have got and can add to the elegance of a therapy session. And this is really where I was keen to hear your ideas about how someone maybe who isn't hypnotherapy trained can take some of the simpler language patterns and start to apply them and start to get the results that show the elegance of why language matters.
Absolutely, and that's what I'm going to talk about. Actually, I've got a small presentation set up, so I've got some text to go along with my lecture. And I'll have to start off by saying I'm not a big friend of kind of school-like training or meeting sessions. So I'm not very big on frontal lecture. I'll always love some dialogue. So whenever you have any questions popping up, please don't wait until it's all over, but shoot away. You've got the chat box where you can type into your questions. You can also unmute yourself on Zoom by clicking the appropriate button. So anytime you have any questions, please feel free to ask them right away. This is going to make sure it's the entire meeting is a bit more vibrant, a bit more dynamic, and yeah, I guess that's a good way to go.
And are you going to now go into share screen? I think you said you had some slides. Yeah, great.
Well, we haven't tested it, but let's see if I can make this work. Should be able to. So let's get started. By the way, as you can probably hear, I'm not a native English speaker, so please bear with me when I stumble over my own words every once in a while. I actually did spend an entire year in the United States. When I was 15, I went to high school, but when I came back home to Germany and I started traveling to the UK, I kind of lost my American accent, and now I really sound like a German speaking English. This is a little bit down to my own inclination to kind of automatically kind of pacing the people I speak to. So when I travel to the US and I spend a couple of days there, I get more of an American accent. If I go to the UK, after a few days, I might sound a little itsy bitsy tiny bit British. And it becomes absolutely hilarious when I go to India, because that's, okay, you don't want to hear this. Right.
Well, now you're saying your English is excellent, and I think you speak better English than I do.
Right, so let's see if this works. You should be able to see my first screen now, and I'll just have to make sure I see all of you while I do this. Okay, so do you see my screen?
Yes, and if I mention to people, if you want to play with the top right, you can change to like presenter view,
Mhm.
It just collapses things down a little and obscures your screen less. So just have a go at that.
Right. Before I get started, who here is a trained or a passionate hypnotist? Please raise your hand and wave a little bit so I get a feeling of how many. Yes, that's great. Yeah, so we've got a few people who already know what this is all about and some who are new to this. My intention for this practice group is to give you a taste of what hypnotic language is. You don't have to walk around swinging a pendulum afterwards. You don't have to do any stage stuff and make people bark or do silly stuff. But if you have just a small taste of what it feels like to use a language that's directed towards the unconscious parts of the mind to help your clients get into a deep and profound change process, well, I guess that's where we're headed at. Right. Okay, so we've already covered this. So let's get started with a topic of using hypnotic language in a havening setting. As I've already mentioned, me and also my team, we're all full-time hypnotists, hypnotherapists, but each and every one of us who's trained in havening, we use it right side along hypnosis. So it's basically 50-50. Mostly we start off by doing the havening session and we end the session by doing some trance work. This seems to be a beautiful combination, which creates some kind of symbiotic effect. So each makes the other one stronger. So let's have a look at what hypnotic language is. First point is that hypnotic language is directed towards the subconscious parts of the mind or the unconscious parts of the mind. It depends a little on which psychological school you belong to. The ones call it subconscious mind, the other call it unconscious mind. A lot of NLPers don't like to say subconscious mind because they claim it kind of indicates the subconscious mind is lower than the conscious mind. Milton Erickson, one of the most famous hypnotists of all time, said it doesn't really matter. You dare to be sloppy with which expression you choose. It doesn't really play a big role. But when we do talk about conscious and unconscious mind, it does make sense to kind of have a basic understanding of how these two different areas differentiate from each other. When we talk about the conscious mind, we talk about our cognitive abilities, about our logical or rational thinking. So the thoughts you hear inside of your own mind, that's usually your conscious mind and also your conscious decision making. Whereas your unconscious mind, it's anything going on basically below your own consciousness. Feelings, emotions, memories, body automatic functions like breathing, they could also be attributed to the unconscious mind. This differentiation is super important because most of our clients show up in our practices trying to crack a problem they have on the conscious level. They've usually been trying for years to no avail. And it's important to gently guide them along to the realms of the unconscious mind to find the solution they're looking for. Hypnotic language is also the language of possibility and opportunity. So we're talking about what one can do and can experience, as opposed to any must do or any force involved. This is also one of the reasons why hypnotic language usually sounds very gentle and supportive and very easy on the ears. Also, when speaking to the unconscious mind, we try to be so gentle. We don't create any unnecessary conflict, which usually arises whenever somebody is forced to do something. For using hypnotic language, we do not need a formal hypnotic induction. An induction is the process of putting someone into a trance. This we do not need for every time we use hypnotic language. So there are many chances in our everyday lives to use hypnotic language, but especially in the havening session, even when you don't do a formal hypnotic induction, you can always use hypnotic language to assist your clients in basically switching over to a mode where you see more opportunities for yourself, where you are more relaxed about your own change process, and usually become a lot more optimistic and develop a lot more self-esteem. So basically, hypnotic language is supposed to alter the state and change the client's experience to a state of readiness for change. We do not prescribe the change. We do not tell the clients they have to change. We'll gently guide them along to a position where they kind of develop the positive outlook of the opportunity the change can happen. Okay, that's a lot of talk. Can I maybe give you a small example of how conscious communication differentiates from unconscious communication? Okay, good. I'd like to start off by showing you a suggestion that's not very hypnotic, but that's directed towards the conscious parts of the mind. You might probably have already heard this one. Just do it. So it's 3 easy words. It's a really big message. And for whatever reason, a lot of people do develop some sort of feeling associated to this claim. But this is because a lot of money has been spent on advertising and showing beautiful, strong, athletic people using this claim. But just the 3 words, just do it, you know, it's kind of, yeah. Imagine a client comes into your practice, says, okay, I've got stage fright. I've got a big presentation I have to do next week. I've actually trained for this and I basically know I can do it, but I don't feel very confident. So if you were to try to coach the conscious parts of the mind, you basically have to say, just do it. There's no reason whatsoever in having any fear. You've prepared, you know how to talk, just do it. How big is the chance this is going to work? Yeah, basically none whatsoever. So if you were to try to put these same 3 words into a language that's directed towards the unconscious parts of the mind, it becomes a bit more than 3 words and looks like this. Not sure if this is big enough for you to read. I'm gonna read it to you. So now, if you were to relax really, really deeply right now, so you can easily get in touch with your own inner resources and your own inner creativity, where you will discover seemingly endless opportunities and also possibilities now, realizing how incredibly easy some things can be that used to be hard or difficult in the long gone past. While your conscious and your unconscious mind now start to cooperate, and a deep and honest feeling will emerge from within yourself, a feeling of trust, of strength, and of authentic empowerment that will leave absolutely no doubt about the fact that you can do, experience, and feel all the things you enjoy. And just maybe go for it and do it, no matter what your conscious mind thinks or says or comments, because your unconscious mind will take care of you and supply you with an extraordinary amount of self-esteem, empowerment, and inner strength and stability, so you can have a joyous, relaxed, and also playful journey. So this is a lot longer. And if you were to approach somebody on the street and just tell them this, they might think you're kind of stupid because it just sounds a bit weird. But this is one of the hallmarks of hypnotic language, that it does sound weird to the conscious mind. So context, it's always super important. In the appropriate context, within a session with a client who wants to experience change, these words could kind of create a very special sort of magic. And it's a lot different to just saying, just do it, or just believe in yourself, or there's no reason to worry, because this language is structured in such a way that it opens possibilities, and it ultimately leaves the choice up to the client. So it doesn't tell you to do anything, but it gets your unconscious mind to think about various positive ways where this could be headed. Right. Any questions so far?
We have got one question on the chat there about whether it's possible for.
Oh no, sure, I can do that.
Yeah, you can.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. You can share. Great.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you.
Good. Any other questions? I hear somebody typing, but I don't see who it is. So we're 73 people by now. So big hi to everybody who just joined in.
Just unmute
Right.
yourself if you want to ask a question out loud. Please feel free to unmute yourself. Bottom left, you should see your mute and unmute button.
Good. Thanks, Tony. Okay, so I'll move on. Hypnotic language, it allows your clients to do new stuff, to experience new stuff, to have new sorts of feelings instead of giving commands. This is a big cliche about hypnosis. The hypnotist telling somebody what to do. We don't do this stuff anymore. This is very old school. It's maybe used to be done hundreds of years ago, but this now you will feel very confident about yourself, and you are strong, and you just believe in yourself. This is so old school. It's not done anymore, and it's quite cliche, but it's also oversimplistic. So it just doesn't really work. People who want to believe it, maybe they will believe it for a little while, but it doesn't reach your unconscious mind unless you're already in a deep state of trance. For the hypnotic language, in order to work, you need to structure it in a more creative way. Hypnotic language, it shows the client opportunities instead of just giving one certain direction. And this basically is found in one of the hypnotic premises we use when we work with clients. So whenever we do hypnosis, or whenever we do change work in general, we usually try to give something to the clients as opposed to taking something away. So we try to add flexibility to the way somebody thinks, acts, or feels. This might sound a little weird when you think about, okay, common scenario for a hypnotist, it's a smoking cessation session. So obviously somebody who comes into the session, they do want to stop smoking. So a hypnotist should take smoking away, shouldn't he? No. Instead of taking away the ability to smoke, we add in a new ability. That is, whenever your body tells you, okay, now it's been a while since I had my last cigarette, now it would be time for another one. Usually a smoker would have no other choice than to light up a cigarette if he's in an environment where he can do this. But after a good hypnotic session, it's basically like one side on your shoulder, it's an angel. On the other one, it's the devil. The devil says, light up the cigarette. And the other part says, but you don't have to anymore. So it's, you still can do what you used to do. You could still light up a cigarette, but you don't have to anymore. As opposed to before the session, usually you had to follow the urge and you didn't have much choice. Modern hypnotic language, modern change work in general, usually tries to add something to the client's experience and add flexibility in thinking, in feeling, or in the way you act. Hypnotic language also leaves the ultimate choice up to the client instead of forcing something upon her. So when Milton Erickson became popular, he's by far the most well-known hypnotist. He kind of made it very stylish to use hypnotic language in a way that lets the client decide what she or he wants. It's not do this or don't do this anymore, but what if you were to experience many new ways about your own experience that assists you in finding new ways and actions that will help you get to wherever you want to be, leaving it to the client what the goal of the change process should be. Hypnotic language, it's usually soft and gentle, but can also be quite strong and directive at times. Now, when we work with havening, we know the drill. We usually start off quite strong with a lot of presence to give our clients the trust they can open up to us and in the right hands. They can open up to the process and experience whatever they need to experience in order for the technique to work. And as we go along throughout the session, we usually become a bit softer and a bit gentler and pace it all down. Same goes for hypnotic language. So no hypnotist is stuck to using one way of using hypnotic language, but there's a lot of variation of flexibility in using this technique.
We have a question come through.
Yes, yeah. Stephen asked, would you describe the construct of the therapeutic session? Yeah, absolutely. So a hypnosis session, it basically consists of two main chunks. First chunk, it's our so-called cognitive talk, where we have a therapeutic conversation, much like a coaching session, but also use hypnotic language so the unconscious mind is already activated. Second part, it's the trance work. It's the relaxing bits of the session where the client gets to sit or lie down and usually doesn't have to do much at all herself. It depends on the hypnotic technique that is being used. So there's suggestive hypnosis where the client actually does not have to do anything herself anymore, and the hypnotist does all the talking, makes offers to the unconscious mind by structuring whatever was gathered during the pre-talk, during the cognitive coaching talk in hypnotic language. There's also dynamic ways of using hypnotherapy. This is where clients and hypnotists get into a dialogue whilst the client is actually in trance. And there's also the analytical ways of using hypnotherapy, where the client usually does a regression back in their own lifetime to find traumatic experiences and moments in their past. Truth be told, we're not using regressive hypnosis anymore because we have event havening, and that usually does the job a lot quicker and more reliable. Sometimes we use hypnosis to find traumatic incidents and moments in the past when the client is unable to do so herself. But usually, event havening, it's just best solution by far. Okay, Stephen, does this answer your question or?
Exactly. Thank you.
You're welcome. Great. Good. So continuing, when using hypnotic language, we don't adhere to common conscious logic, but inspire the unconscious part of the mind. So this is the reason why hypnotists sometimes sound quite silly. The language we use, it's not directed to the consciousness, to your own ratio or logical thinking, but tries to inspire your unconscious mind. So another hypnotic technique, it's trying to confuse the conscious mind, so the unconscious mind will open up. And this is for a simple reason. Whenever your conscious mind cannot cope anymore because there's too much input, because there's too much stuff going on, because there's too much information, or because you simply cannot understand what is going on, it kind of withdraws a little bit and opens up your unconscious mind. think about Emily, think about the different factors that lead to traumatization. Actually, this is also where your conscious mind cannot cope anymore, and your unconscious mind opens up to kind of save a situation that can be harmful to you in the future. So your unconscious mind means good by traumatizing you, but the effects usually aren't as good as we'd like to. Okay, another question. Can you give an example of trying to confuse the conscious mind? Absolutely. There's different inductions that try to do this, but it's basically just using these weird sentences and constructs. So if I go back to this example, if you read or speak this in a sort of hypnotic manner, it's very hard to follow along what the hypnotist is actually saying. And after a while, the strong emotional words just tend to soak into the unconscious mind, whereas the conscious mind starts to drift after a while. So imagine this text, but maybe 50 times longer. This will be a hypnotic session, and after a little while, it's just actually quite impossible to consciously follow anymore. Good. And famous hypnotist Milton Erickson said, a state of confusion usually always precedes a new state of honest understanding. And I think this is something that is also true. And it goes for almost any area in life, especially for learning. When we train new Havenists, they all come in super excited and keen on trying out what this technique is about. And a lot of them obviously have already tried some form of event havening by watching some YouTube videos and just trying it on themselves and going totally crazy. Wow, this works really well. And they come on a class and we present some theory and there's some understanding happening and they try it out. And then some confusion sets in and it's like there's a German saying, you cannot see the forest because of the many trees around. Is it an English equivalent, or does this make sense? Tony? Yeah, okay, good. Thanks, Steve. And this usually is an important step to real understanding. So it goes really deep and it's anchored in your unconscious mind in such a way it's available to you in the future.
Olf, can I ask, one of the ones that I found really very useful as a confusion state manager, if you like, with language, is where we might change something halfway through a sentence. So if I was to say, and as you consider what you are going to, 3, 4, 5 options are available to you are amazing, aren't you? Halfway through those sentences, it's there's key words that are ambiguous, like to and to, where you can actually change the direction of the sentence and they follow one half and can't quite follow the second half.
I don't know what you just said, Tony, but I suddenly feel quite amazing about myself. So thank you. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you so much. That was a really good example. And some sort of confusion is actually quite helpful because a lot of our clients are 100% sure about their own limitations and about not being able to achieve what they try to achieve, about not reaching their goals, about having some sort of psychological blocks that keep them from going any further. And if we get our clients to be a little confused about the validity of those limitations, we're already on a good way. So let me show you a couple of examples for actually using specific hypnotic suggestions. So a very nice one would be the what would happen suggestion. What would happen if you were easily able to leave your own limitations behind you? What would happen if the problem that used to be such a big part of your life suddenly became less and less visible until it at some point disappears like a dwindling cloud in the skies and the sun shines on your face and body again and you can feel oh so free about yourself? what would happen if today's havening experience would completely change your life for the better? Now, please consider the difference. If I were to tell my client straight up, today's havening session is completely going to change your life, I sound like maybe some third-class sales person, I don't know, but it doesn't sound, I wouldn't be able to develop any trust in my therapist. It just sounds like a little bit narcissistic, doesn't it? I'm the best, and I'll get you wherever you need to be. I'll make you smoke-free, and you don't have to do anything. It doesn't work this way. But by preceding it with what would happen and making it a question, your client probably doesn't really have to find an answer, but the unconscious mind is motivated to start an inner search thought process. And you've all been there before when you kind of lose something and you're looking for it for a long time. Let's say your keys or your phone, and you just don't know where you put it. You think about it and you try harder and harder and harder. And there's the saying, the harder you try, the less it will work, until the moment where you just relax. Let your unconscious mind open up, and there it is. You know where to look. But this is only after you stop trying so hard. With one of these questions, what would happen? We can give our clients an opportunity to let their unconscious minds start an inner search and thought process without having to involve the conscious minds. Make sense? I can't hear you. Just nod if you like this. Okay, that sounds good. Thank you. Good.
Sense.
Would it be? Yeah. Somebody just said something.
No, makes sense.
Thank you so much.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you so good. Whoever it is.
Wouldn't you
Gary.
agree-
Good.
Hi.
Hi.
So far. Wouldn't it also be another way of just agreeing with what they think is not possible for them, and then adding in would be okay? Because, you know, I'm one of those resistant types, and it's like, yeah, okay, keep going. But when you start agreeing with my resistance, oh, okay, this is different. And then start the questioning in there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because it does create confusion for the conscious mind, and it allows for new opportunities. So that's a beautiful way of using hypnotic language. Absolutely. Important thing is there is no must here. Whatever works for the client, it's best. And we hypnotists always have to avoid becoming too kind of stuck up about the specific language we use, because we always have to try to be creative in flow with our oh, can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Things just froze up on my
Have
computer.
you ever tried just talking in circles sometimes if they're just real resistance, you know, get them all confused? I've done that. I do that, used to do that with my grandchildren, and just talk in circles about all kind of stuff, and then get them out of that conscious level, and then you can start playing with the questions and the reverse psychology.
As long as you know where you're headed,
Okay.
it's all good.
Okay, thank you.
It's a lot different to just, you know, babbling away and not knowing what you're actually saying, but kind of overloading the conscious mind. It's a beautiful way of reaching the unconscious mind, though. That works as long as the hypnotist knows where he's headed. Right. Good.
Olf, we've got another question come through on the chat.
Yes.
There. Do you want to read the question out as well, just in case people aren't seeing it, and for the recording?
Sure. What are your thoughts on applying the havening during regression to traumatic scenes for a client? I'm new to havening, but I am a hypnotherapist and use regression as part of my therapy, and it seems to be that the havening touch when a client is accessing really traumatic scenes would be ideal. From my point of view, no. For the simple reason that during a trance, you're so super vulnerable, and touch can be misinterpreted so easily it becomes quite a liability during the session. So when somebody's really in a trance and in a traumatic situation at the same time, no matter how you frame it, touching the person could maybe reinforce the trauma. So that's maybe 9 in 10 cases where it could be helpful, but just to avoid the singular case where it goes all bad and well, we're not doing it. And we also recommend our students not to do it. You could get your client out of trance again and then use event havening to work on it, but we don't mix it into the hypnotic session. Tony, what is your view on this?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, I don't use the hypnotic trance at that point in a session. So I do it more at the other side when we've done the havening. So I'll take your view on that as an expert one.
Mm. Okay. But that's usually a guideline that kept us quite safe in the past and allowed our clients to have a great experience, because you can basically get the client out of trance and then use event havening. That's our ideal way of working. Good. Good. Thanks.
We've got some extra comments as well there.
If you can make the client use self-havening instead in a hypnotic trance. What do you think about that?
When you use self-havening, well, it depends. I wouldn't use event havening for a traumatic experience, but if you use self-havening to relax yourself, to boost your confidence, and put that into a hypnotic trance while doing self-havening, that could work beautifully.
Yeah, but if you let the client do self-havening, so you
could also,
yeah, so you don't wake the trauma.
Yeah, but whenever it's traumatic and a trance is involved, we don't want to add in any element of touch, because that can really reinforce the trauma if things go bad, and we don't want to risk this. Good. Okay, another question. Do you ever use the focus bands during a hypnotic session? No, I used to. No, we don't. We've got some devices around and we've been playing around with it, but it's still in our stages of development, so we're not quite sure at this point how to use it. So in some havening as well as hypnotic sessions, we have it run along for experimental purposes, but we don't use it in any productive way as of now. Could change. Good. Good. So let's keep on. Just let me check the time. So it's 10 more minutes until we have our minute of applause for the volunteers.
There is one just here, sorry to interrupt there, Olf, from Vivian. She was saying, what if you include it in the frame of reference from the start? But I think you've kind of answered that. You were saying really, even when you frame it up, it's too risky to go there with the touch. Would that be your answer?
Well, really depends on the client and on the specific technique you use. Could be possible, but personally, we really try to keep these two things separate, because it from our point of view, it adds into the experience and makes it just a lot more wholesome. So in the hypnotic session, the client can fully indulge in the hypnosis part. And when using havening, they can fully concentrate on the havening session. But that may be our personal style of working. I don't know if you can say this is right, this is wrong, but that's just my suggestion or my view on this. Lena, I can see havening and hypnosis working well together to reduce cravings and addictions. Any experiences with this? Absolutely. We do a lot of smoking cessations. We do a lot of food cravings. We treat eating disorders. We have some alcoholics. It really depends if they need a clinical withdrawal. We don't work with them. If they've already had a clinical withdrawal stage, we do work with them. And we also work with cocaine abusers, although we stay away from any psychedelic substances, because that's a bad combination with hypnosis due to the possibility of sudden flashbacks. And in all cases, we use havening. Have been doing so for the past few years. Amazing experiences. So just as a quick example for smokers, who want to have a tool for as a self-application technique, we teach them self-event havening against craving. So whenever they feel the craving go up, they'll scale their craving on a scale from 0 to 10 and apply the event self-havening process, rescale, and lower the number until they feel really comfortable. And this is just an amazing part of the therapeutic intervention. We also use event havening during the session, some role havening, some transformational havening. So for addictions, I think it's one of the best tools on the market. Absolutely.
Can I just ask? I was more to whether you stay in trance. So would you keep your client in trance and then apply the havening, or keep it quite separate?
Well, that really depends on the case.
If it's a trauma, no, because that can raise all sorts of issues. But if it's cravings and addictions, would it then be okay to keep a client in trance and do it then?
I cannot really answer this question because we don't do it. Maybe it's just our style of working. We found it to be more effective if we do havening first, then do the hypnotic bit, and maybe end the session with teaching some self-havening. That works quite well for us, so we never put it into the hypnosis part. So I cannot really say if it does work, if it's any good. Yeah.
Okay.
Could be possible. I don't see anything.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought it sounds like a good thing to do in tandem, but I wasn't sure if it's been used together in that way.
Yeah. Well, I don't. If anybody else on here, they can maybe type it in the chat box. But yeah, Tony just wrote he uses havening with timeline often. We've actually seen an amazing demonstration at last year's conference where he did it, and yeah, absolutely.
I wrote the same, that I use you see how deep the trance is, because I see havening and hypnosis as you do it together, and you will see how deep in trance the individual is, and then or are, and then especially for generational trauma, I find it very efficient to just to get a feeling of that they can be in a state of feeling that this is not only their fault, it's a generational trauma, and how to stop it by understanding the generations before them as well. So I use with very beneficial for me as a tool, because I see hypnosis, and of course you are using hypnosis session as well. So I understand the concept of having divided the two of them. On the other hand, it's, as you talk about hypnotic language and how deep into a trance you are, it's understandable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, if you use it as one.
Yeah,
but
so
I never do. I let them do self-havening if they are in a trance.
Well, Vivian just wrote, yeah, absolutely makes sense. So there's, I think one of the main beauties of havening is that it's so flexible and you can use it along so many other techniques. And that's why I'm very thankful to Stephen and to Ron for allowing this to happen. They don't say use havening exactly like this and that and don't, but they invite us to be creative, to find out what really works, and that opens up so many new possibilities. And I guess there's still many years ahead of finding out new ways of combining havening with hypnotherapy, with NLP techniques, with coaching, other talk therapies. That's going to be, I guess, a great journey for us all ahead. Good.
Olf, I was just wondering, one of the ways in which there could be a direct parallel with the hypnosis and the havening is the linking of the movement with a suggestion, with every stroke of your arms, you know, opening up more possibilities, and that kind of simple, just linking.
Mhm. Would it be okay for you to just really deeply relax right now? And what would happen if you were to discover a deeper state of relaxation today than you've ever felt before? And maybe today is the day where something magical happens for you, where something that you've had for a long, long time and you wanted to get rid of it suddenly loosens up and is just gone within the blink of an eye. So there's the next hypnotic suggestion, a simple maybe. It may be that something that used to be difficult will become incredibly easy today. Maybe a deep inner shift will happen today, so you will experience more freedom, strength, and empowerment. Maybe a profound inner change will take place and liberate you, so you can feel relaxed and refreshed after today's intervention. We hypnotists like to use the word maybe in absolute abundance because it's short, you cannot forget it, and you can use it in so many creative ways that really help your client, because it's really very different again than saying, okay, this will be much easier now, as opposed to maybe you will discover how something will become much easier now that you're here and that your conscious and unconscious mind starts to cooperate. Good. I'm very curious about how relaxed you will feel today after this session. I'm very curious about how many new and valuable insights you will find today. I'm very curious about how easily you can reach your goals and leave old limitations far behind you. And it's absolutely not necessary to relax deeply now. Relax deeply, it's in capital letters because that's what hypnotists call an embedded command. I do say it's not necessary to make a short pause, relax deeply, that's the embedded command now. And it's not necessary to do anything specific because you can fully and completely trust your own unconscious mind to do whatever's right and helpful for you today. This is quite helpful for those clients who are afraid they get it wrong. You probably know them quite well. You try to explain event havening and tell them, okay, now go back into a memory, and they're so afraid they don't get it right. They don't get the feeling strong enough. They don't get the memory up to the conscious mind enough, and they're always afraid they just mess up the process by not being good enough, by not following directions completely. And that's where hypnotic language can be super helpful, just easing the client up a bit and giving them the self-belief they can make this work well for them. Good. Sometimes people can just remember their old traumas in order to work on them without needing to fully relive them in the moment. Also very helpful for event havening. You don't have to say, make the trauma very big now, go into it, relive it just as if you're in it right now. If you want to activate a neural pathways, you'll have to get your client to think about the trauma, but it doesn't have to be 100% reliving it all over again. So that's where hypnotic suggestions can be super helpful. Sometimes it's good to just take a deep breath and let go in order to be fully ready for the work we're about to experience, and also for the round of applause Tony is going to introduce right now. Tony, microphone.
Thank you.
Tony,
Thank you. Got it. Yeah, nice nudge there for me. Yeah, so sometimes it's really nice, isn't it, to really show our appreciation for those who are out there doing work that's keeping us safe. And here in the UK, it happens to be that we've got an appointment every Thursday evening at 8 p.m., which is what it is here coming up in in the UK. But I also know that this applies just as much in every country. So wherever you are, a minute of a round of applause, I know, will be a real celebration of the people who are really helping us out at these very unusual times that we find ourselves in. So we'll do that for 1 minute. I'm just going to check on my phone here. Yeah, let's just unmute if you will, and let's just give a round of applause for 1 minute.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you all. That was great.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you all. Thank you. That's great. I think we could applaud all evening, couldn't we, for what people are doing out there for us to keep us safe. So, wonderful. Okay, that's great. Olf, you may need to just mute yourself again. I've just muted. We'll carry on applauding on the inside as we continue with the session. Olf, are you there?
I'm here.
Yeah, you're back with us. That's fabulous.
Good. Can you see my presentation again?
We can. Yeah.
Beautiful. Good. So, wow, already 1 hour in, so I'll have to hurry up a little bit, or we'll have another practice session. We can all wrap it up. I'd like to give you some examples for using hypnotic language in a havening session now. Okay, let's start off by taking a look at event havening. Well, obviously, you could tell your client, think about a traumatic situation right now to get the event havening session started. But maybe one of the many creative ways we could use the power of our language in order to kind of activate the neural pathways where the trauma is stored could be something along the lines of, now I'd like you to take a few moments to let your thoughts and feelings wander back to a situation that used to be difficult for you. And that's already the first hypnotic suggestion. We don't say that is difficult for you, that used to be difficult. So we presuppose today is the day where this will change. Only as much as it's comfortable for you at the moment. So one part of your mind will wander back to that specific situation, whilst another part of you will stay aware that you are safe and secure right now, right here with me. And I'll guide you through the entire process so you can trust your own unconscious mind as well as me to protect you and make this an amazing and wonderful experience in which you can release old emotional baggage just as easily as slipping out of an old winter's coat and feel the sun shining on your face and shoulders all over again. Just as one example of how you could structure hypnotic language to make the process of event havening a bit more elegant. Make sense? Good. You're all muted, so I'm okay. 74 people,
great.
No one's responding.
Just the elegance of it. It's actually a very beautiful thing to experience happening. If you're in the client chair, it just feels like it's washing over you and supporting you, doesn't it? It's part of the safe haven of the process.
Absolutely. Very much so. So same goes for role havening. Now, there is one variation of role havening where we ask our clients to imagine some sort of role model or mentor. And when they fully imagine what it would be like to have this person in front of them, we start applying the havening touch. So we could say, think about a mentor or a role model. short and crisp, but it's not very elegant. Or we could say, take a few moments to think of a person that in some way had some sort of positive influence on you. And it's absolutely not important whether you personally know this person in real life or just think about what it would be like to meet her. What does she look like? What does her voice sound like? So when in a few moments I speak to you, you might imagine me speaking in the voice of the person. And if she were to look you deeply into the eyes, what kind of energy would you be able to notice? Is there a certain gentleness, maybe, or a strong feeling of trust and protection? Whatever it is, maybe you allow yourself to let this imagination to vividly fill your inner experience right now. So you can take your time to notice any subtle nuance about her that is helpful for today's experience. While I now start applying the soothing, heavening touch, and you can imagine when I speak to you, how you hear the voice of that wonderful mentor of yours. Good. And that's the part with the hypnotic suggestions. Any questions right now so far? Actually, I just realized my chat window is gone, so I'll have to recover that.
Everyone's in trance, so
good.
No, it's we've had small comments along the way. I think we've had the questions. If there's anyone who feels they haven't had their question answered, please just unmute yourself and speak up.
Good. So we've got 15 more minutes before practice. Oh yes, I hear someone speaking.
Yes, I just have a quick question.
I think that all words are good, but it is more the presence of the practitioner that's speaking these words that really carries the meaning to the client before which they stand. So there's a more than one part, more than two parts. It's not only the words, but how they're given to the client at that time as well, I think.
Well, I think you're quite right. There's verbal communication, paraverbal communication, and nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication, it's body language. Paraverbal communication is how you say something. And if I were just to tell a client to relax deeply right now. So just a few words, but put real emphasis into the words. And as Stephen just said, presence. Don't lean back and go like, relax now. But, be present, be aware, be connected to my client. It can work really strongly. As opposed to, I could say like 20 lines of perfect hypnotic suggestion and read it from a script if I'm not really fully present, if I'm not attuned to my clients, if there's no unconscious connection going on, it's not going to work.
And that's kind of a rule for whatever tools we take out of the toolkit, isn't it? That presence, really being there in the moment with our client is such a key ingredient, whatever change work we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a genuine presence. It has to be genuine, and there's certainly an element of good energy. When you witness Ron doing it, you see that genuine, in-your-face, present, but secure and safe type of amazing facilitation. So I was thinking the same thing, Stephen.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I think it was Elizabeth, was it speaking?
Yes.
It's probably close to a 10.
10, okay. Do you mind? Good. Just open your eyes for a sec.
It's probably close to a 10.
So,
10, okay. Do you mind?
Sorry, Elizabeth. She just gave me the best, like to switch over to the part of the art of touch of havening. Since we've only got 15 minutes left, I'd just like to show you a few different practitioners of Havening, applying Havening touch, and invite you to notice the differences in actually working with variations of Havening. And whenever you see masters of Havening at work, when you see Ron, he has a very unique way of applying Havening. I'm always super amazed when I see Stephen apply Havening touch, because no session is like the one before. He always works a little bit differently. And if you pay close attention, there's so incredibly much to learn. But both Ron and Stephen, you see a full presence. They don't do Havening. They don't think, I do a technique now. It's really a philosophy. It's a form of art. They put their whole focus 100% on their client. And I guess if you want to become really good at Havening, this is what you need to do. Not learn it as a technique, but when you apply it, make it a form of art. And when you see Ron do it, so I've got this one video, it's quite beautiful to watch. Good. This.
Just open your eyes for a sec, point them to the right, left.
Can you hear the audio?
Close your eyes.
Okay.
I want you to imagine now that you're walking along a beach. Is that okay with you? Good. Mm-hmm. Every step you take as you walk along the beach causes that distress to diminish and vanish. And if you do feel safe, peaceful, and calm, count 1 to 20 out loud as you walk along.
And if you do not just pay attention to the touch and the technique, but Ron's way of looking at his client, of being connected, there's so much to learn, because it's not just the speed and the areas where you touch, it's about the whole connection that's going on, becoming fully attuned to your client. And I just love to watch any of our mentors of Havening do their magic, because you know, okay, theory, we can learn it, we can read it, and routines, we can memorize them, but the art of applying Havening touch, you have to watch it, you have to connect to it. And whenever we have a conference or a new video that's being published, it's always a unique chance to learn something new. So that is Ron's style of working, very slowly, 2, attentively.
3, 4, 5, 6.
So gentle touch, strong mind and intention. You can see this when you watch him. Ron, he's absolutely relaxed in his body. And I think this is one of the main factors you need to teach new students. You need to remind yourself as a practitioner before each session, if you carry any tension in your body, in your neuromuscular system, your client will ultimately feel it. It's really no way of hiding your own tension. So when you feel insecure or in doubt about yourself or about the technique or about the client's chance of having success, session is probably not going to work. But if you put relaxation in your body and you can have a strong flexibility, your client will feel this. So when watching Ron, this is super easy and simple to observe. So let's watch somebody else. I've got like a really like a god of Havening coming up right now.
Those hands. So I want you to just access those wonderful feelings of feeling resourceful. And I want you to access all of the...
Now this is facilitated half Havening. Tony is in front of, I think, 100 people watching him. He doesn't look to the audience. He doesn't go like, oh, I hope they like me. He doesn't like go fishing for compliments with his eyes. He's not, he's 100% tuned into his client. Take a look at his body posture, strong yet super relaxed, at how he guides his client into the movement. It's really beautiful to watch. So there's a really strong presence going on and very high mindfulness.
The information that allows you to know you're in a moment where your best self is fully present, where you know you have all those resources, where you know you have a lot to offer the world, where you feel on top form. I just want...
Yeah, doesn't take his eyes away from his client. He's got this strong posture, so that's very nice. And Tony is standing up right now. You can also do this while sitting down. Be in a relaxed yet strong position. Be present, not only with your words and intentions, but also with your body, so your client can have a chance to feel fully secure and at ease working with you. Now, Ron, he was medium slow applying Havening touch. Tony, also medium slow. Let's take a look at a little bit faster approach to Havening. That's Paul McKenna.
Look after everyone better. So that's what I'm going to invite you to do today. So I'm going to need to sit close to you here like this. And I'm going to ask you to remember, let me just put these away. When you remember that, that incident with the secondary device, that's this.
Okay, so even before he starts Havening, look at his eyes, how he stares at his client, not in a threatening way, but in a fully connected way. And you hear Paul speaking, he's so super fast. He's actually really fast when he applies Havening touch. Within some Havening circles, he's lovingly dubbed the Duracell bunny of Havening, because he just goes and goes and goes, and he's like really quick, but it works for him because he's a quick guy and it's authentic. He doesn't fake any slowness or any, he's speedy, but it's just his personality and usually also his clients.
This is the most traumatic one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. If you just remember that now, and then on a scale of 1 to 10, tell me how bad it is.
9.
9, and close your eyes and clear your mind. Clear your mind. And imagine that we're walking together on a beach. And with each footstep that you take in the sand, count out loud from 1 to 20.
1, 2, 3.
Look after everyone better. So that's what I mean.
Sorry, I was the rewind button. If you watch Paul, he's grimacing all over his face. He's closing his eyes. It's as if he's at a really extraneous workout at some gym. He's like getting in like 110%. So that's also full presence
13,
going on.
14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
Did you see Paul's face just now? His eyes going all this. So this happens because he's all in. He doesn't hold anything back. He dives into the experience along with his client. And that makes, I think, the sessions very, very powerful. So I had a few others, but since we've only got 5 minutes left, let me go to the part that I wanted to show you, the philosophy of touch. So we've got a mindful approach versus a mechanical approach. Mechanical would be, okay, I just do this. Mindful is, I tune myself into my client and into the session before I start working. My own personal ritual when I start doing Havening with a client is I rub my hands, I let them hover above the shoulders just for 2 seconds, and then I slowly lower them until I touch shoulders. Takes 5 seconds, makes a whole world of difference as opposed to just starting rubbing the arms. Because your client, they might not notice consciously what's going on, but they will certainly feel that you really care about what you do, that you put some mindfulness into your work, and this is usually going to drastically improve the outcome of your sessions. Ritual versus intervention. I could think about doing Havening as some sort of, I do an intervention, or I could make it a beautiful ritual of 2 people authentically communicating, coming together on the basis of a change project they have, and making the entire part of Havening touch, also putting some sort of ritual into it for yourself. And that leads up to point number 3. You could think about Havening as work and about applying Havening touch as work, or you could see it as a joyful experience, because touch, it feels good, not only to your client, it'll also trigger the therapist's feel-good hormones, and therefore, well, it can be a joyful experience if that is your intention for a session. So before we wrap this up, I'd like to show you a few parameters of Havening Touch. So we can have a variety of speed, we can have a slow movement, and we can have a fast movement. And my personal point of view is you can be too slow if you barely move, and you can be too fast. But in between too slow and too fast, there's a whole world of possibilities that each practitioner needs to discover for themselves. So we usually invite our students on a training course to play around with speed, become quicker, become slower, and let the clients give them feedback, what works better. Same goes for strength. You can be too soft for your client in touch, but you can also be too strong. So when you're in a practice group, and you can do this later on now on the session right here, when you guide your client into self-hypnosis, invite them to be a bit quicker, to be a bit slower, find their own comfortable spot of speed, of strength, and also of putting in a little pause. So you can just continuously stroke, or you can make a very little pause in between. And to get the circle back to the hypnotic language, we can also confuse the conscious mind by working with something Milton Erickson called ambiguous movements and touches. We can, for example, start off with a strong touch, just, letting the client feel you're safe and secure with what we do. And then you become more gentle as you go along. You can start off rather quickly, like this, and slowly easing the tempo down. And also starting off continuously and then putting in a few little breaks here and there. Important part is to pace the client. Get a feeling in the pre-talk how your client ticks. Is she rather quick person and appreciates a fast language and movement and touch, or is it a very comfortable, laid back and relaxed person? Does she have a firm handshake or a very soft handshake? So there are so many ways you can tell what speed, what strength, what interval of pauses a client appreciates, that you can play around. And also after each session, you can get your client's feedback. Would quicker, slower be better? So you can adjust your own touch for the next session. Personally, I think this variations of using touch, it's critical to working successfully with Havening, because obviously you need to know the theory, you need to know the processes and the different forms of intervention. But when you apply the touch, you need to get a feeling for your own speed, for pacing the client's speed, for adjusting strength, and also working with pauses. If you do regular Havening, but also if you guide your client into self-Havening. Right, and I had a couple of other slides. Okay, Tony, it's 8:25 sharp now. That was my timeline to wrap my part up.
Sure. We can go for another 5 if you want to quickly do those 2 extra slides, Olf. We can go another 5.
Well, I'm fine right now. I mean, I had a couple of more videos and some other, but I think this kind of nicely wraps it up right now.
It's a good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, there's so much value in there. And also, there'll be a lot of questions people have. Is it okay when we go back to the Facebook forum and people are starting to really anticipate how they're going to benefit from what they've heard and learned tonight and start to apply it, that they can bring some questions to the forum and keep this discussion alive?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Yep.
Great. Thank you. Well, I'm going to now start to put you guys into breakout rooms because we've got an opportunity here to do some practice. And you've heard some lovely hypnotic language that you can start to find ways to experiment with. You know, what would happen? Would it be okay for you? Maybe this, maybe that. I'm very curious. Sometimes these are some of the hooks that we can use to ease the process elegantly. Also, in terms of the touch, you know, notice things about your own clients, the people who you're paired with in this session. You know, be 100% present, noticing what you notice. Manage your own state and be 100% there in the room with the process. Notice that there can be variations in speed and strength and pauses, and get that rapport with your client and notice what's right for different people and how you can vary it and steer it across a session for different effect. So there's an opportunity for you to play. And I know at this point some people do kind of need to leave, and that's fine. I'm going to ask actually if you did need to leave at this point, if you could do so in this moment before I put the breakout rooms together, because it just helps then for us to choose the right number of rooms so everyone's working with someone. That's great. Thank you for participating up to this point. Okay, so we've got 50. Oh, we're going down slightly. I'm just going to leave it at the moment because I know that some come particularly for the education piece and some love to stay on for the practice. Okay. All right, I'm going to put, there's 45, it's changing slightly. Okay, we're going to just wait a minute. All right, I'm going to create 15 groups. Some of you will have 3 in and some will have 2. Well, I would like you to decide between you what you would enjoy practicing most, and then take a role at being practitioner, take a role at being client. You may be an observer in there as well, so just decide that between you. And we're going to come back as a whole group at 1/4 to the hour. So if you keep one eye on the clock there, because when I call you back, there will just be about 60 seconds before then everyone comes back into that room. So just be mindful of the time, and we're coming back at 1/4 to. So I know some people have put some questions. We will come back to questions when we come back from the breakout. So enjoy being magnificent as you experiment and give yourself permission to put things into practice. And one of the groups will be lucky enough also to have Olf there. So get curious. I wonder what it would be like if you ended up with Olf in your group. Okay, so I'm going to go for that. Ready? 3, 2, 1, going into our breakout rooms.